Coming of age and coming out have become synonymous terms to me. As I've navigated the past 4 years of high school, I've seen and been part of many different coming out experiences. I've seen close friends come out to each other about their same-gender crushes, and during my senior year, I helped my peers come out to their parents about Harvard not actually being their dream school. Personally, I've learned to come out to the world about what it really means to be a survivor. Survivor is a label that I hesitated to wear for most of my life, but especially the past couple years. I hesitated as one hesitates to take a major step that you know that is going to change your life. Yet, I was also genuinely fearful. I was afraid of being vulnerable, and especially fearful of how people would react, thus change their perceptions of me once they knew this part of my identity. What's funny looking back is how much I wanted to embrace my identity for myself, yet the biggest thing holding me back was how much I worried about how people would perceive me. My identity is already constituted by many labels. I am a first-gen immigrant, first-gen college student. A couple years ago, I came out as bisexual. Not to say that that particular experience was any easier for me, but it was definitely a lot simpler. It is a lot more socially acceptable for a teenage girl to admit that she likes both genders than it is for her to confess that she was sexually assaulted for 2 whole years of her childhood. There was a lot of self-doubt that raced in my mind as I debated whether or not to come forward with my identity. Some of those doubts were, is this actually going to make any beneficial difference? How do I even tell my story? Probably worst of all was, is anyone actually going to care? In my mind, there were already a lot of tragedies happening in the world, and for me to add one more from my childhood, it would be overwhelming for a lot of people to handle. But as much as I wanted to continue with my life the way it was, there was this innate urge for me to speak up, which grew as the Me Too movement gained prevalence. I started reading stories about other survivors and their experiences with trauma and coming out. For the first time in my life, as I read these stories, I felt heard. I felt seen. Then I realized that the only way to change perceptions in this world is to create and put forward something so powerful that it is enough to break any pre-existing misconceptions. I realized that my story could do just that. I've always been a storyteller. I used to read my younger brother bedtime stories, and whenever there was a creative writing project in school, I would always go above and beyond for it. As I was writing about my sexual assault, I realized it is the hardest story to tell because I can't sugarcoat any details. I can't simply give myself a happy ending. In fact, my story is not even conclusive in the slightest. I'm still healing and dealing with setbacks every day because healing isn't a linear process. It's not a contingent process. You don't simply reach a milestone and suddenly 20% of your trauma is gone. In fact, you might even reach the goals you have for yourself and then find yourself put back where you were just a couple weeks ago. Yet, healing shouldn't be expected to be linear. It shouldn't be. So going back to my writing, I started writing this poem over the course of 2 to 3 weeks during my junior year of high school. And I wrote this poem because it was the medium that I knew best, and I wrote because I knew that paper listens when people don't. And that slowly gave me courage to tell my story, and then on a whim, I decided I'm just going to post this on Instagram for myself as one step that I know I can take to heal. So I did it. And then I promptly deleted Instagram right after because I didn't want to know how people would perceive me. Maybe a couple days later, my friends told me, hey, you should really reconsider that decision and re-download Instagram because you'll be surprised by what you'll find. And when I re-downloaded it, there was this outpour of love and support that I honestly never expected from my community. I mean, I am a teenage girl who is dealing with PTSD, and PTSD isn't a mental illness that a lot of people can discuss or relate to. Yet, in my private messages, there were all these other survivors who reached out to me and said that my story and poem really resonated with them and how they were proud of me for doing that. And I realized I'm proud of myself too. Recently, I was able to meet and talk with Chanel Miller. Chanel Miller is the author of Know My Name, which is a memoir that communicates her experiences of being the Emily Doe in the Stanford rape case a few years back. In the webinar with her, I remember a very prevalent theme that we were discussing, and it was about how survivors don't need to deserve agency. We don't need to do anything to earn the care and support that we need. In fact, our allies should help foster a welcoming space for survivors. Because if the world shows us, survivors, that they are ready to hear our stories, then we ourselves can be comfortable with sharing. People are uncomfortable with talking about sexual assault because it's stigmatized. And yes, it is uncomfortable to talk about, but guess what? My assaulter didn't think of my comfort when he hurt me. And when we are uncomfortable talking about something, it shows that that discomfort is our ignorance. We would rather just avoid those topics so that we can remain in our little bubble. Yet, I argue that we should press back against that discomfort and learn to talk about these issues, because when you can talk about them and address them, you show a survivor that, you are someone that can be trusted and listened to. And so I'm going to be reading my poem from junior year with a few modifications to fit my life now. And this is When a Mockingbird Cries. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. The lullaby your mother sang as she tucked you in, its lyrics keep me up and send shivers down my skin. I never sleep without some illumination, in fear of a monster, not of my imagination. The ghost of a hand against my back, is that the wall or him about to attack? My throat constricts, choking for air, as he pushes me down and pulls my hair. Stay there, he says with a chastising glare, and two, wake up. He's not really there. I pass out in one lifetime and wake up in another. This time I choke out mid-cry for my mother. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. I'm in a shopping cart being led through the aisle. Every toy I point to gets added to a pile. He grins. I love seeing you happy. Let's go back to my place and take a little nappy. Years later, I'm alone in my room, still screaming on how I let myself get groomed. You were 5, I say. I try to justify. You were the victim, and he was the bad guy. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. It's first period when my body racks tremor after tremor. I text someone and leave class with a clamor. This boy had let his knee wander along my body. He wouldn't stop, and it triggered awful memories. What happened? You used to be so good. I struggled to angle my face away from his manhood. I had begun to suspect what he was doing was wrong, but the limbs pinning me down were far too strong. Hey, Antu, what can I do to help you? Someone asked, his face full of worry. Too bad I'm ashamed of my feelings and leave in a hurry. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. My 5-year-old self is excited to be out of class, sat down in a chair, pulled into my arms is my favorite stuffed bear. I'm across from my father, as well as 2 police officers. My dear, is there anything you would like to tell us about your male friend? Oh God, they knew this would be the end. I shouldn't have told. I was a traitor. My guilt couldn't have been any greater. I say nothing, suddenly fascinated by my shoes. Perhaps they'd drop the charges if I refused. I'm wrong, the case passes along, and soon the monster I knew was gone. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Why did I tell? Oh God, why did I? Now he was the victim and I was the bad guy. Perhaps I should have said it all was a lie. But it wasn't. The evidence said otherwise. The bruises on my hips, the life nearly gone from my eyes, toys and dresses he bought for me galore. The latter somehow always ended up on his bedroom floor. I couldn't look in a mirror for so many years. Every time I did, I'd break down into tears. The black and blue have long faded away, but I still feel disgusting anyway. Earlier one day, a boy had grabbed my ass. Not wanting to start a scene, I silently went to class. Now I'm home, looking at my body, seeing every imprint all these men have left on me. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Naked to the human eye, but tainted in my mind, what's been done to my body is history I cannot leave behind. Most children's monsters live under their bed. Mine had the audacity to sleep with me instead. He was a family friend who was innocent, and Uncle claimed. It was me who did nothing and even enjoyed it, they blamed. A 5-year-old is not meant to be silenced with part of a man down her throat, for childhood trauma has no antidote. I take ownership of my body again day by day, but sometimes the memories cannot be kept at bay. My days are normal like any other 18-year-old, but my nights are spent paralyzed as the flashbacks unfold. Healing has setbacks. I will never find a happy ending, but that's okay because every day I wake up is a piece of myself mending. I've kept the story within for most of my life. To come forward or let it go has been an emotional strife. I cannot hope the whole world will accept my past as true, but here's to the survivors who can chime in and say, me too. Thank you.